Sporting Journal Radio, presented by Onyx.
All right, welcome to the show. I'm Brett Amundsen. Thank you for tuning in on this station right here by downloading the podcast wherever you get your favorite podcasts or by streaming the show on demand. That's just the audio version. Of course, you can also watch this show on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble. Do you have to say it like that, Dan? Rumble?
Yeah, I think it's an option. I think you're cooler if you do.
Or maybe not.
Well, whatever floats your boat,
Probably cooler if you don't say it like that. But anyway, you can watch it there. Of course, Instagram, follow us on all these. If you are watching this, please hit that like button, subscribe, follow, whatever platform you're watching it on. Please follow us for updates and share this with your friends. We do appreciate that. We got a big show for you this week. We're talking deer hunting with the deer openers coming up here in the various states around the region. We're going to talk about what people are seeing out there right now. We'll offer you some tips on what can make you a more successful deer hunter in the woods. We'll talk about preferences from bows, shotguns, rifles, different types of firearms and weapons that you can use out there in your pursuit, what you like, what works better, etc., things like that. Little things too, like hunting in the rain, hunting in strong winds, what preferences are like. And we're going to talk about some successful hunts so far. Sam Soholt will be joining us here on the show. Also, Tyler Scott will be coming in. Taylor Bester was going to join us this week too. He's a little under the weather today. Hope you feel better. Taylor, we'll have you coming up in a couple of weeks because we try to get Craig Engwall on the show this week too, Dan, from Minnesota Deer Hunters Association. And Craig's like, I don't know what it is about this time of year, but everybody wants to interview me. And he's just booked solid with interviews all week this week.
It's funny how that happens around deer season.
Deer season, yeah. So what I told Craig and what I told Taylor is we'll have them on as the season progresses or maybe after the season to talk about what kind of season we saw out there around the region. So for now, though, we're going to bring on Sam Soholt, who is joining us via the internet from probably from up there in Fargo. Hey, Sam.
Yep, that's exactly where I'm at.
How's it going, man?
It's good, man. I'm just glad to be back on.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming back on. We appreciate it. Of course, part of the reason we wanted to have you on is because you just shot a really nice deer that you should probably...
I did get lucky.
Yeah, tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so was down in Wisconsin last week and was part of, every once in a while I get really lucky and I get to go on a photo assignment where they let me pick up a tag. And this was one of those assignments. So I got to go hunt a property down in Buffalo County, Wisconsin that was for me was like hunting Disneyland. And it was just incredible. It was Bluff Country Outfitters is the one we were at and shooting photos on assignment for one of my clients that I work with. And I shot my buck the second day into the trip, and it was kind of, we got there right before that cold front hit, which was perfect timing. The first day that we hunted, everybody that was hunting saw good deer activity, stuff moving before that front coming in. The first evening that I sat, I actually had two 3-year-olds within shooting range and had one work a scrape, and they were chasing does, and there was grunting. There was all sorts of stuff going on. And then the next day, the temp had shifted, it dropped a lot, and it was just one of those cool, crisp fall days for late October. And got in the tree in the afternoon about 12:30, and about 4:30, I had a doe pop out below me about 40 yards, and following her was a big 8-point. And they walked by me at about 40 yards, no shot, just too thick through some of the trees down below me. And then about 40 minutes, hour later, that doe had ended up circling uphill, and she ended up walking right below my tree stand out into this cut bean field. And sure enough, he was following her. And instead of going under my stand, he cut out in front of me, and I shot him at about 6 or 7 yards.
Dang.
And yeah, so yeah, he's one of the better bucks I've ever shot. And like, it was just so intense because when she popped out on the trail coming to my stand, and he popped out after, coming straight head on. So just watching his frame like work down that trail, like obviously I couldn't take a frontal shot, and I just got lucky that he cut out in front of the stand. Otherwise I was going to have to do a full 180 in the tree stand to try to shoot him quartering away as he got past me. And so every time he put his head behind a tree, I was shifting my boots in the stand and trying to get ready for that maneuver. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, no, it was just a super cool experience. So fun to have one like that on the ground already in October.
I almost got busted by one of those boot squeaks one time, so I get it. And moving around in a stand like that's not that easy. What kind of stand were you in?
So this was just a ladder stand. So it was like a big heavy duty ladder stand, which can be good if they're secure. And this one luckily was, but man, I've been in a bunch of them where, you know, you like your heart starts pounding and the tree stand starts shaking. So, yeah. I just put up
a double wide, a 2-person, so that Dan and I can hunt and film out of it. And I had just a single ladder stand in there and didn't have any problems. Well, when I put that big giant double wide up there, I realized the tree is probably just a hair small for that big of a stand. So she does shift a little bit when you're up there, and you got to be real careful so you don't make any noise. And talking about shooting a deer at that distance, 6 or 7 yards, I've shot a number of deer at that distance with my bow, and never with a gun, it seems like. And that's the beauty of bow hunting. I mean, I've had some deer close during the gun season, but that's the beauty of bow hunting, in my opinion. When people ask me why I like to bow hunt, not gun hunt, that is one of the biggest reasons right there, because you get those deer that aren't running for their lives. You know, you get to see them kind of in their natural patterns, their natural habitats. If there's a trail nearby, they're just kind of slowly moseying along that trail or browsing along the way, and you can get deer so close. And sometimes that's a challenge. I shot one, and it was right after legal shooting time, and I put my bow up, and all I could see was brown. The deer was so close to me, like I had to move my bow around to try to figure out where the shoulder was, and it was like looking through a scope, you know, at 5 yards. Basically, it was so close. But man, that's awesome, and an 8-point. That's cool to see a big 8-point like that. It almost looked like he could have gone to a 9 there, Sam, with that one.
Yeah, he's got a little nubbin. I mean, I guess he does have a split G2, so you could count that if you want. He's got a little nubbin on that left side that didn't quite make an inch, so it didn't count as a 9-point if you're scoring one. But I mean, for anybody who cares about inches, typically I basically like rough estimate when I look at it, but one of the guys in camp put a tape on it right away, and it just cracked that 150-inch mark as an 8. So,
as an 8, that's awesome.
Yeah, he's real big frame on him. He had 25-inch main beams and 19, almost a 20-inch inside spread.
That split G2 is pretty cool, and in the picture, it's hard to tell in the picture, but it almost looks flat on the front.
Yeah. Yep, it's basically like a big blade. That G2 on that right side is just super wide. But yeah, like we're talking about shooting them so close. I don't practice that. Like, that stand was probably 20 feet tall. I don't practice that like
it's a tough
7-yard shot very. And yeah. I totally screwed it up.
You don't have a 6-yard pin on your bow?
No, I don't. And I was so jacked. My heart's pounding, and I got drawn back on him, and I put it right on the pocket, and I just spined him because obviously the arrow's still rising at that point. So I spined him and then I was like, just quick grabbed another arrow and was able to get another one in him. But, almost like basically got lucky on that one for not, just no zoning him. But it was super cool.
Man, that's awesome. That was a job, right? I mean, that's cool. We get to do, when we film stuff, I mean, some people give us a hard time saying, real hard work. And it is still work when we have to go on a photo shoot or some sort of content creation at whether it's a guide service or an outfitter or boat company, whatever it is, it's work. But we usually do get to have a little bit of fun with it too. And I don't know how many times I've had, filming a TV show and the freelancer's like, I better not do any fishing while I'm here. I'm like, dude, grab a rod. Right? Grab a rod and do a little bit. Well, I don't know what happens if you catch, the big, what happens if I catch the biggest fish? I'm like, well, I'll pick up the camera, we'll figure it out, but it's nice to let the camera guys have a little bit of fun too. So were you being that you got to get a tag, are you basically doing a story about it, like a social media story about that then? Or is there going to be like a written piece or a filmed piece, or how else can we learn about it?
Yes, it was. This trip was mainly call it a PR hunt. So it was basically a way to test out some new products. And so there were some writers there from a few different publications, and I'm an ambassador for the brand, and so I was there, to both shoot photos and then hunt. And so it was kind of a way to just get those products in the field and let everybody test them. And that was like the main focus of the trip. So. That's what we were there doing, and I was not going to turn down picking up a Wisconsin deer tag. So
no, and you were down in bluff country, weren't you?
Yeah. So it was, I put it in my post about, you hear about all these places in the country where big deer exist. Like I was an intern at Midwest Whitetail, so southern Iowa, like I've seen that firsthand. But places like Adams County, Ohio, Pike County, Illinois, and then Buffalo County, Wisconsin. And Buffalo County really being that spot in the country where, there's more, it's like twice as many Pope and Young and Boone and Crockett deer are killed every year in that county alone than the next top county in the country. So you look at that and you just know like you're in a place where something really special could walk by. And like while we were in camp, a guy from close in the area brought his buck in to have photos shot, and it was 203 inches. Whoa. I mean, an absolute gargantuan deer.
Jeez.
And when he dropped the tailgate on it, like I was just hanging out in camp because I had killed a deer the day before. But yeah, he pulled up and dropped the tailgate, and like my jaw, I'm pretty sure I saw gravel like in my chin from my jaw hitting the ground. It was just unbelievable stuff. So, is
there a picture of that one floating around somewhere?
No, I didn't. I haven't posted anything about that one because gotcha. I didn't know the gentleman, and I don't know if he wants anything posted out there. Sure. But yeah, just a land of giants for sure.
That shot, by the way, Dan, pull up that shot again where that deer's hanging in that. I was going to call it a garage, but that's a structure is what that thing is right there. That's pretty sweet. That looks like a home. Is that like a winch or a homemade gambrel or what's going on there?
Yeah. So the barn that they have, it's like full of, 35 years of deer hunting equipment and whatever. And then they just have a big pulley system with a winch on it, and then gambrels there hanging there, and then they have a scale on it because they like to, it's Wisconsin, so they like to weigh everything when you bring it in. So, sure. We threw my buck on the scale. It was, 254 pounds live weight, and then it was 215 pounds after we had dressed them out. So it was kind of like I've never weighed a deer, so it was kind of fun to like know that and know what I'm looking at. But
40 pounds of guts in there. I think that sounds about right. I don't weigh deer generally either, but I think that's about what I've heard for when you're pulling that stuff out of the deer. That's pretty sweet. Well, when you talk about those counties that you mentioned there, what do you suppose it is that makes those counties so much better? Is it like-minded deer hunters that are doing some deer management? Is it just the landscape that creates prime habitat for deer? Is it more food? What do you suppose it is?
So I think it's a combo of variables, but Buffalo County for sure. Like I know definitively that is from a couple of things, and mainly being like-minded individuals that own property. So the place that we were hunting, Tom Indebro is the guy who owns Bluff Country Outfitters and that whole property, and he bought it. I think it was a little over 30 years ago, and kind of started focusing on trying to kill big deer. And as the success of his farm grew, and like all the neighbors started to see like, oh man, like they let this deer and this deer go for a while, and all of a sudden somebody shot a Boone and Crockett buck, and all these different things. You started to have this like culture being built in that area, and it just continued to spread. And now you have basically an entire county or entire portion of a state that, whether it be guys like Tom or local landowners or people that, have bought hunting land there, they're all thinking the same way. And so you have culture that's trying to grow bigger, or, at least pass up younger deer. You have the topography there is such that it allows deer to get old. You have basically all these ripples of land and stuff where deer could just disappear, even if you spend a lot of time on that property. So you have that going for it. I think the winter is, you have a winter, but it's not as harsh as maybe some of like the more northern climate stuff. And then just food and genetics, like all that stuff combines. But I think it starts with, people thinking about, maybe let that deer go. Maybe, focus on trying to kill old deer and not just, big deer.
Could you show us on this map exactly where you shot that deer? That'd be pretty cool. No, that landscape down there along the river is such neat country. And for a guy that spent a lot of time, you know, in the Dakotas and western Minnesota, where I'm used to being able to, what's the old joke? You could watch your dog run away for 3 days. He's still running. You can still see him running away 3 days later. Being able to, you know, going down into that bluff country down there, that driftless region, it's like being in a different world down there, man. Yeah.
And incredible. You know, like I've had my grandparents lived in Wisconsin, so we would drive through some of that type of stuff. And every once in a while, a couple times we drove through in the fall, and just like watching the color change and all that stuff happening in like that bluff country was just like very special even back then. And then just to go hunt it, you're right, it's a completely different world from what I grew up hunting, which is very flat, and you know, there's very few trees. And so you're like, well, the deer probably live in there, or they live in a cattail slough, or, you know, whatever. So it was kind of fun to go to a spot where I had to like wrap my head around a different way that deer live, you know, in different areas that are bedding and, you know, travel routes and that kind of stuff. So it was fun to just, as they were talking about different deer living in certain areas, you know, I would pull up on X and just be looking at it and be like, oh, okay, that makes sense that they would use this ridge to connect to this ridge, to connect to this ridge. And that's why they're seeing him here and there. And, you know, so it's like a whole new learning experience. It was pretty cool.
I know I've asked you this before, but are you from Fargo? Are you from North Dakota?
Nope, I'm from South Dakota. So grew up in Sioux. Yep. Born in Aberdeen, and then grew up in Sioux Falls down in the southeast corner.
That's right. So I grew up deer hunting in northwest Wisconsin generally, and very wooded northern Wisconsin, kind of hilly, nothing like down in southwest Wisconsin, but northwest Wisconsin, kind of hilly, lots of trees, lots of stand hunting. And then we did the big drives. You get 10 guys and just start pushing woods, and guns would be going off in all directions. And we did that for a few years. And we're like, this is a little too, and then we went and got some new land up there. And we just stand hunt. Basically, we'd all spread out, and we'd go out there in the morning, sit all day, and shoot our deer. And I remember sitting in my stand one time, and we leased some land. And a group of about 11 or 12 deer hunters carrying 30-06s and dressed head to toe in orange came up, and they said, well, we're going to push these woods. And I said, well, these are our woods. We got 8 guys spread out in stands throughout the woods here along the river. Like, yeah, we don't care. They were going to push it anyway. So that kind of changed. That's one of the reasons why I think I got into bow hunting a little bit more, because it's just not. It's a little more peaceful. It's a little more relaxing. You don't have all that pressure of deer hunters in the woods moving deer all over the place. And where I'm going with this is then when I moved to North Dakota and I saw how deer hunters did it in North Dakota, and instead of 12 guys driving every piece of woods they could find, they were literally driving in trucks around the prairie until they saw deer run across the field. And obviously that's the exception. That's not how everybody hunts over there. But I saw that a little bit while we were duck hunting, and I wore a few more pieces of orange when I'd walk from my blind back and forth to the blind from my truck. But that landscape difference though in the Dakotas, where it was surprising to me to see as many deer, you know, relatively speaking, as many deer in the Dakotas as I'd see in the north woods of Wisconsin. When you're talking about the prairie, and you're talking about groves here and there, and cattail sloughs, and then, you know, fields of corn and soybeans. Deer are great at adapting to wherever they need to be, but you had to learn how they use the landscape differently, because the landscape obviously was very different.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was fun over there. Go ahead, Sam.
Oh, yeah. No, I was just going to share a story. I had a similar experience with opening weekend of rifle season. When I was in college, a buddy and I decided to go pheasant hunting that weekend. I hadn't really been paying attention to the season dates, because back then all I did was waterfowl hunt and pheasant hunt, and went out there and we walked one field and then left and had to go home because it was so terrifying.
Yeah.
It's just... Yeah,
it's crazy.
But
I half the time in Minnesota here too, on the gun opener, half the time I just stay home. I just stay inside, get work done, maybe do a little bit of pheasant hunting or duck hunting on a small piece of private land or whatever. I don't go anywhere near the public stuff because it gets walked by about 100 people, which whatever that's what the land is for. I'm glad people are out hunting. I'm not trying to knock it, but it gets a little Western out there sometimes, Sam.
Yeah. So anybody going out for opening weekends, just be safe. Know where your gun's aiming.
For a guy that's hunted in South Dakota, North Dakota, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and beyond, when you look at how deer hunting is managed and regulated here in our region, what do you see between the states that are different, and what do you think works better than some of the other states? Have you seen anything you said, gosh, I wish they did it like these guys do it over here?
Oh yeah, definitely. I would say the timing of the gun season, and it's the difference in each state agency. And I'm not going to sit here and knock any agency. So you have some agencies that manage for quality of an experience, and you have some agencies that are going to manage for opportunity of experience, and that's fine. I mean, it depends on what you're going for as an agency and how much money you're trying to raise for the state to manage the wildlife. So, you have states, North and South Dakota, both have rifle seasons right in the middle of the rut. If you go further south, if you look at a state like Kansas, which is historically known for big deer, their gun season doesn't start until December 1st. I think, especially in open country like that, I think that makes a giant difference. Now, if you look at more wooded states, parts, obviously northern Minnesota, big swaths of Minnesota have lots of woods. Wisconsin has, a lot of big hardwoods. I think you can probably get away with having a gun season during the rut a little bit more. I mean, obviously there's still going to be a lot of deer because all the bucks are acting pretty stupid. But when it comes to that, like real rolling prairie stuff, it's hard to save a lot of deer during the rut when there's a rifle season going on. That being said, if you're a rifle hunter, it's amazing. And I've got a rifle tag in North Dakota this year. I'm going to be hunting whitetails with a rifle. I'm not going opening weekend, but I'll go shortly after that. And so, like I say that on one side, and then on the other side, I'm like pretty excited to be going and hunting the rut. It's the first time I've been whitetail hunting with a rifle in like 15 years. So I'm, excited to go have that experience and do that. So, but yeah, it kind of depends on what the goal of the state is. And I think that really stems from the culture of the hunters in that state. Mm-hmm. So if you have states that are, it's more surrounding like deer camp and just shooting deer to get meat and that kind of thing. Like, if the deer camp vibe is still like heavily embedded, it's going to be pretty hard to get that, changed ever, because one, it makes a ton of money for the state, and two, it gives a ton of people opportunity to go hunting. And that's really, what we need to focus on is, getting people into hunting, keeping people into hunting, and making sure there's a balance between, what people are trying to do.
Yeah, that's the hard part to, in a state like Minnesota, you have so many different opinions, and they all like to think that theirs is the best. Me included. I think I've got the best opinion, and so do you. I'm sure. I'm sure we all do. It's hard. Like, I wouldn't want to be in charge of managing deer in Minnesota, because you have to try to please everybody, and it's impossible. But I think there's that battle of meat hunter versus trophy hunter. And I think what you can do, I think you can have the best of both worlds. And I think people need to be open to changing their mind on a couple of things, because I love to eat venison, and I want to put a deer in my freezer no matter what, but I also know I want to shoot a big deer, and I would put one on the wall. I'd be happy to. So I think you can do both. I think you can be a meat hunter and a guy that wants to shoot a big buck. So when it comes to, you just have to pick what deer you're going to shoot to be your meat deer. And to me, I usually try to pick a big doe. Some people will, and there's arguments about what's the best deer for a meat deer. But for me, it's a big doe, one that doesn't have a fawn with it generally, and then let the little bucks get bigger. Now, guys that like to meat hunt and don't care about a trophy, they're going to go shoot a 6-pointer and be happy with it, and that's great, and that's their right to do so. So that becomes, how do you change that guy's mind to say, if we want to shoot bigger deer, just pick a different deer for your meat deer, and then everybody wins. But if that's the only deer that guy has a chance to shoot, he's only out for the weekend, it's the only time he's got to hunt all year, it's hard to tell that guy not to shoot that deer. Yeah, basically impossible. And impossible. I certainly would not be. I mean, I would certainly not want to be in charge of managing, the state for trying to keep everybody happy. Yeah. But I do agree with, your line of thinking where if, to have the best of both worlds, it's going to take that shift where,
people that are just looking to, add steaks and ground deer to the freezer, like, try to shoot a doe and maybe let that spike walk or that little forky or, whatever. And certainly don't, pass up does that come by and then shoot a buck just to shoot a buck. I think and we probably like collectively as hunters need to do a better job about that, and do a better job of talking about that is okay to do. Like, it's okay to shoot a doe. They taste just as good. And, when you were saying, there's arguments about what deer taste the best. My argument is that if it's cooked properly, they all taste amazing.
Agreed. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I've eaten a lot of strange things over the last few years, and it's cooked properly. It all tastes really, really good.
Yeah. I shot a sagey mule deer a couple years ago, and I fed some of the backstraps to a couple of guys, and they said it's some of the best steaks that they've ever had. So I'm 100% in agreement with you about that. About just processing, preparing, and handling. So I always stress, if you're going to eat that, if you shot it, you should eat it, or somebody should be eating it. You should be treating it like meat and not just a dead animal that you're going to drag out of the woods at that point and then throw on your cargo hitch trailer that's going to sit and suck exhaust for that 6-hour drive home in 70-degree heat. That deer's pretty much ruined at that point. So take care of it like it's meat. All right, Sam, I want to talk a little bit about just kind of some of your preferences on hunting. Give people some tips if we can, like when it comes to hunting. Obviously I play the wind, which is pretty obvious, but what's your favorite time to be in the stand? Do you have a time of year or a time of day that you prefer to be out there?
Yeah. So, my favorite for sure, I like hunting mornings more so, than evenings, but I think you can I've killed a lot of deer in the evenings too, but I like mornings better. And my favorite window of time to hunt is November, starting the 3rd or 4th through the 10th or 11th. In my short life, my experience is that I've seen more mature deer on their feet, moving in daylight, starting somewhere right in those first few days of November up until about the 10th. And then you'll get, some of that lockdown period, which can be equally as good, but a lot of times guys will just not see deer. But yeah, that first, kind of let those first few calendar days roll by and then hit it pretty hard.
I like that Halloween week. Yeah, right around end of October, beginning of Bucktober, beginning of November.
Yeah.
For sure. You know what? I love evenings, but it's mostly because I don't like getting up as early as I need to get up to go.
Yeah.
I hate getting up early.
I can understand that.
Gosh, but I like going in the daylight too. I like being able to see when I walk into the stand. But I think I've definitely shot more deer and bigger deer in the morning, bow hunting. And I just remember too, going back to that argument about bucks and does and what people can shoot. Sometimes too, that becomes, as bow hunters, I don't really have to think about that because I can shoot whatever. But those gun hunters, sometimes they don't have doe tags, and when they have a buck only, and their only opportunity is shoot a small buck, that's a tough decision to have to make if you want to eat venison. But back to bow hunting or deer hunting, I guess in general. What about you hear hunters say, "Oh, when the weather gets bad, that's when I hit the road." That's when I like to hunt. Those weather changes, and sometimes a weather change can make just about any hunting better at times. But when it comes to deer, like on a windy day or a rainy day, we had a lot of rain here today when we were recording this, and all of a sudden we got bucks on camera again. We hadn't seen them for a couple of weeks. Now we also had the last of our standing corn come out next to the property, so I think that probably had more to do with it. But to see a nice buck walking during the day during shooting light, legal shooting time, and there he is. He's not a giant, but that's the first buck of that size we've seen in a couple of weeks on camera. Yep. It just happened to be on a rainy day at 7:30 in the morning. So what's been your experience on cloudy, rainy, windy days?
So I think if you can have, if you get rain, if it's just kind of a consistent light rain, where it's one of those soakers, I think that can be incredible hunting. Especially if you have a cold front coming in or kind of that weather shift. If you have a really hard rain, all those deer are mostly doing what you want to be doing, which is just not being outside, just laying down and staying put and trying to stay as dry as they can. when it, depends on where you're hunting, but in the Dakotas, if deer didn't move in the wind, they would hardly move. So you can definitely kill deer on windy days, but they're going to be a lot more cagey because they can't hear anything, and they're going to be hyper aware of their surroundings. So I've found that if I do have a buck walking in on a windy day, they are like on every movement, and trying to suss out that danger if they can. But yeah, and when there's a huge shift in the weather, I found that a lot of times you have that on the day of the big change, whether it be a snowstorm or a rainstorm or whatever, it'll really shut down activity. Everyone's always super pumped up about, oh, it's going to be incredible, the snow's coming in, whatever. And more often than not, on the day that it snows, not a thing moves. And then, once it starts to peter out, or, like the sun breaks through that cold front or whatever, then they're on their feet and move, like just blows up. Yeah. So I prefer to hunt. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I prefer to hunt like on the back end of a big, shift, or right before it. But that's just me.
When you see a buck on camera, how many times do you need to, or what criteria do you use to establish a pattern? Is it just multiple deer coming from the same direction at the same time? Is it multiple bucks? Is it the same buck showing up multiple times, or a combination of all the above?
So typically my strategy on trail cameras, and this is mostly because I hunt almost all public land, it's really difficult to pattern a deer on public just because there is that pressure. And, if there's one person walks in and hunts that area, it might shift their pattern completely. So I typically use trail cameras as a way to just gather inventory from, late summer all the way up until I start hunting. So I'll go in and pull cards and check everything. And it's mostly just confirming or, seeing if there's a decent deer in even the area. And then I'll start to figure it out from there and look for, the best sign that I can hunt. So I don't try to pattern deer so much on cameras just because of the way I hunt. I think there's only been one time in the last 5 or 6 years that I've killed a deer that I had seen on camera before. It was just, most of the time I'm like, oh, there's at least one good buck in the area. I know this is an area I want to hunt. And then typically where there's one good mature buck, another one will move through because, dominance and deer tend to, mark their territory, and we're freshening up scrape lines and all that kind of stuff.
Where do you think we are right now in terms of the rut?
With this weather system we've been having in the upper Midwest, like if you can be in the woods right now, you should be in the woods right now. We have, a cold front come through. You got highs in the 50s, lows in the 30s and 40s. Like, it's a very good weather pattern for this last week of October, and a lot of big deer are getting killed right now. So if you can be in the woods, you need to be in the woods.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you been seeing, you mentioned you did have that buck was chasing a doe. Have you been seeing a lot of chasing out there? So
when hunting in Wisconsin, almost every buck that I saw was at least tailing a doe, or basically looked like it was seeking and doing, like really hard pre-rut activity. The buck that I killed, he was following that doe and grunting every few steps as he was coming in. It was awesome. So I haven't been out. I'm going to start hunting again tomorrow morning. So I'll text you with some more updates, but cool. I don't know what's going on around my area right now.
Well, I'll tell you where we're at. This is October 27. We're recording this. And a year ago, by the way, I was looking back at some memories on Snapchat, and we were covered in snow a year ago on this day.
It was 9 degrees today.
Yeah, I was going to say, we went duck hunting. It was 14 degrees, and we were breaking ice to duck hunt on this day a year ago. So what a difference a year makes. Yeah, it's definitely not that way right now. And I did have one deer come through last year too. It's just a little buck chasing a doe and just all worked up, just chasing like around the grove, just chasing her around the grove, like back and forth. It was, I think I actually scared him off because I was laughing at him so much in the woods. It was pretty interesting. What about numbers? Are you seeing good numbers of deer out there, you think, or where do you think we're at population wise?
Yeah, I think decent. I know both North and South Dakota got hit pretty hard with EHD in areas this year, especially the western part of the states. North Dakota's offering refunds on tags if you want out west. And I haven't looked at the map in South Dakota to see where it got hit the hardest, but with the drought we had this summer, it was kind of inevitable that was going to happen. So I'm hoping that it didn't kill everything, but we'll see. We'll kind of see what happens when we get out there. With any luck, the eastern part of North Dakota didn't get it as bad as it did along the river, and hopefully put eyes on something decent. I hunted opening day in North Dakota and put eyes on a good buck, but he was over on private, and too early to try to grunt him in or anything. But it was just cool to know that there's a good buck in that chunk, and hopefully I can get on him tomorrow morning.
EHD was definitely an issue. That drought affected a lot of things, whether it be dry creek beds, dry ponds, sloughs, EHD. South Dakota, Dan, didn't you say South Dakota was pulling tags?
Mm-hmm. They're going to withdraw any tags left over in some of those EHD zones now.
Okay. Yeah.
And did they cancel? I think they might have canceled the late season. There's typically like a later season doe hunt.
Okay.
In South Dakota, in some places, and I think they canceled that as well.
So I just got a message from Tyler Scott, by the way. I think he's still going to try to join us. He might be joining us here in just a second, because he posted a picture, by the way, in late September. It happened to be on my birthday, of all things, of him with a big moose. So we got to hear the story about that, and I'm sure we'll talk some quality deer management with him here in just a couple of minutes. I think everybody was expecting, we had a mild winter last year, so everybody was expecting wildlife populations to be good, and we've been doing pretty well with deer populations. We've been doing well with pheasant populations. It's been a weird year for waterfowl, but I think that's just because we've been so dry that the birds are either pushing down in weird places, or they're just moving through. They're not sticking around. Now that we've gotten a ton of rain here in the last couple of weeks, it's hopefully starting to hold some of these birds up just a little bit. But I wasn't quite sure how the deer were going to do. And I'm thankfully now here, we're starting to see a bunch more deer show up. And again, I think that has a lot to do with all the crops coming out. We're seeing all of our corn is they're just about done pulling just about everything out. Beans have been done. Corn is almost wrapped up, I know, in a lot of areas around us. And so I think I'm excited. Like I bow hunted a little bit, me and Dan bow hunted a little bit early, and we haven't been out there for a while. We've had so many east and south winds, and the east wind does not work where I hunt. So I've been waiting for some west winds, and the only problem is when those west and northwest winds blow, it gets cold sitting in the stand. So
and then we go duck hunting.
Then we end up duck hunting. So, but I'm excited. I'm going to focus on bow hunting here over the next week or two, and hopefully get out there. I think it's about to get real good. There's Tyler joining us. Let's get Tyler in here. Dan, if we can work him in here in just a little bit. Tyler Scott, who's at? Are you still at work, Tyler?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Can you hear us?
Oh, it's been a grind. Yes, I can. It's been a grind today.
All right. What were you doing, man? Can you talk about it?
Surgery, man. Well, just putting people to sleep and waking them up.
Putting people to sleep and waking them up. If it were that easy, everybody would be doing that, Tyler. Well, I appreciate you joining us. I know you've been busy at work, so thanks for joining us here. Just we'll have you for a few minutes and let you get back there. But I want you to tell me about that moose, first of all.
It's a trip of a lifetime. I went to Alaska on a DIY drop hunt. And I don't know how much time I have, but it was a trip that I think every one of you should go on. I mean, Sam went on a drop hunt himself. Obviously, had a little bit different experience. We were out in the Yukon Delta, out in the western part of the state, and three of us we dropped 3 moose in 3 days, and mine was actually the smallest. And so it was a hell of a trip.
Well, you definitely sat far enough behind it to make it look giant. So,
yeah.
No, that's awesome. 3 moose in 3 days?
3 moose in 6 days.
6 days. Gotcha.
Yep.
All right. And so tell me about it. Was it a hard hunt? Did you have to stalk it? How close did you get? How was it?
Yeah, the Yukon Delta is super wet. We spent 12 hours a day in waders. So that was a challenging part, just being in waders all the time. Granted, we were in the Sims type waders with hiking or wader boots, which is pretty comfortable all in all. Mine was the most challenging. The goal was once you shot your animal, you had to get it back to the lake they dropped you on. I ended up shooting mine, I suppose, about 3/4 of a mile away as a crow flies, but that consisted of bog and then another lake that we had to portage a raft across that bog to go then across the lake to get that animal back.
You didn't just grab a paddle and start dragging?
It took... Yeah. No, not really. From the time we went after him to the time we had him back to camp, it was 24 hours.
Dang.
So it took time.
Man. It's pretty cool to shoot a big...
And then
Go ahead, Tyler.
The next moose was 50 yards from the edge of the lake, so it was a complete 180 as far as work involved.
Nice, easy one. Dang. So, I mean, that's pretty cool. Not only a hunting trip in Alaska, which is pure bucket list for me, top of the list, and a moose hunt, and to be able to be successful on a big moose, but the meat that you can get off that animal. Do you know approximately how much meat you got off that moose?
So we brought home about 700 pounds of meat boned between the three of us, and that was less than half. The remaining meat, the outfitter that we use for our transport, they've got a very good relationship with the locals, and the rest of the meat was donated. And each day they have the locals coming in and picking up meat from hunters who are not able or not wanting to take the remainder of their moose back home with them.
Well, I'm sure they love that, having good meat like that, good protein to live off of up there. Cool story, man. Congratulations. And you shared that picture on my birthday, as a matter of fact. So I think that's a sign. I think that I'm going to have to take a birthday trip to Alaska next year, maybe. Let's talk whitetails with you, Tyler, just a little bit. Have you been spending much time in the stand?
Honestly, very little. I haven't had a whole lot to go after here in Minnesota. There's one deer that showed up a couple weeks ago, daylighted on Friday in the morning and the evening, and unfortunately I was on call all weekend, so I sat daydreaming. I tried on Monday, and he showed up in the dark before I got there, and he was there after the dark when I left my stand. So he looked cat and mouse. But really haven't had a whole lot to go after. Heading down to Iowa on Friday to chase whitetails for a week, so hopefully I can change my luck there.
Wow, you Iowa whitetail hunt and an Alaska moose hunt in the same year? Come on. Jeez. What do you think conditions are like this year? What do you think about population numbers? Did the drought affect you much? Where do you think we're at?
Compared to the Dakotas, I feel like Minnesota, we're just fine. We have plenty of water. Nutrition is fine as far as forbs and browse and egg fields.
Well, we have plenty of water
fine over here. I don't think it compares.
Tyler, that's because you live in a county with 1,100 lakes in it. No, of course you got plenty of water, Otter Tail County.
True.
Jeez. But you're seeing plenty of deer, though?
The deer numbers are fine. I don't see any issues for us. Fortunately, we aren't in a CWD area. We aren't in an EHD area. We haven't been affected by the drought like maybe you guys down in the western part of the state or the Dakotas. So we're fine. Of course, deer management is always a hot topic button in Minnesota on how we manage things here for any sort of trophy quality, which is lacking. But that's a topic that you guys maybe already discussed.
Well, do you think we'll ever see APR again?
I highly doubt it.
So I got a message from Rick Hansen here this morning, actually, before we did this, before we recorded the show. And there was a hearing today on a number of things. And one of them was chronic wasting disease and the fight against chronic wasting disease in Minnesota. And obviously the captive cervid farm issue it's got to be the number one issue when it comes to CWD here in Minnesota. I'd like you and Sam get both your thoughts on what we need to do. Rick brought it up today that we need to do live testing on all these captive cervids to find out what's going on. As of right now, they only test deer after they die. So you don't know how many live deer are in these farms that have CWD. In fact, a bunch of deer got shipped into Minnesota here, a couple of weeks ago from a Wisconsin farm, and that Wisconsin farm ended up having a case, and they had shipped a bunch of deer to, I think, 3 different farms in Minnesota or something like that. I haven't read the story in a couple of weeks, so I could be off a little bit on my details, but essentially they shipped live deer with CWD to farms here in Minnesota. What needs to happen, in your opinion? What needs to happen? Maybe Sam, I don't know if you want to tackle this, or whichever one of you guys want to tackle this first. What do you think needs to happen to battle the CWD when it comes to deer farms?
That's a tough question. I think live testing is probably a good start, and then figuring out where to go from there. I've fortunately lived in states and hunted in states where it hasn't been a major issue. And so I honestly haven't done a whole pile of research on it.
Sure.
But I think when it comes to captive animals, I think it only makes sense to have them tested if you are shipping them across state lines, especially with how much the state agencies are cracking down on CWD and trying to really maintain it. That'd be my thought for now.
Yeah, and then you have situations like what happened in Beltrami County, where that guy that had the deer farm, he ended up dumping some carcasses on public land. Well, now that public land is going to be fenced off for 20 years maybe. And granted, it wasn't, what was it, 6 acres or 5 acres, whatever it was. Still, yeah, that's public ground that now is off limits to the public because this guy dumped a CWD positive deer there. So, Tyler, what do you think needs to happen when it comes to the fight against CWD in Minnesota?
I mean, like Sam said, it's a very loaded question, and I don't know if anybody knows the right answer.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. I mean, I don't want to even say the word, but it's like COVID, right? COVID's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. At some point we're gonna have to learn to live with it and manage it. But I think testing for sure on all those live animals, like you say, is a great idea. Correct me if I'm wrong, but dual fencing is still not mandatory on these deer farms. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it's only when there's a positive case maybe that they have to put up a second fence. I can't remember the exact specifics either. Dan will do a little digging.
I feel like a dual fence should have been implemented a long time ago to prevent any sort of interaction between wild deer and captive deer. But obviously the cat's out of the bag now. Mm-hmm. So it's tough. I don't know the right answer.
All right. Well, it's something that people above our pay grade are going to have to make those decisions on, for good or bad. Oh, yeah. Rick just sent me another message. Well, we'll have to dig into this a little bit more and see what he says, and we'll follow up on a future show here. But, Tyler, when are you going to get back? When are you going to be able to spend some more time in the stand, do you think?
It's going to have to be Iowa. We're heading down Friday. It looks like we're going to get a nice push of this rain and this big low pressure pushing south through the rest of the week, and temperatures drop and in 40s for highs and 50s for lows. So next week, both here, the Dakotas, Iowa, anywhere in the Midwest, it should be on fire.
So do you think if I end up having a real nice buck on camera a few days in a row and he's coming through before legal shooting time or after dark, do you think I could have you come and, shoot a tranquilizer dart into him, like right next to my stand so he wakes up at 7:30? Do you think we could work something like that out? Has anybody ever asked you that question before? We'll talk off here.
You're
How about
first.
that? All right. Well, guys, I appreciate the time. I'll let you get back to work there. Good luck in Iowa, of course. And Sam, good luck in your endeavors. We should, do you want to talk about Stamp It Forward, where you're at with Stamp It Forward, Sam, real quick?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. I just did a tally on it, and we've raised about over $18,000 this year so far.
Nice.
And have bought stamps with every dime of that money, and are giving away stamps over at Public Land Tees. So that's what's going on now.
That's so cool. That's such a great program and great idea. Give us your websites. Tell people where they can find that. Websites and social media, Sam.
Yeah, for sure. So publiclandtees.com, like TEES, like t-shirts, is the website. And you can follow us either on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, just at Public Land Tees. So, but yeah, we're still rocking and rolling with Stamp It Forward and raising as much money as we can. And we got some big stuff coming out over the next week and a half or so, I think, kind of kick it into overdrive this year.
Nice. Well, congratulations on the success of that. Keep up the good work, and good luck with everything in the future. And Tyler, anything you want to plug? Some quality deer management, or maybe where a guy could get some surgery or something?
Well, Fergus Falls is kind of on the map right now. So, no, I got nothing for you guys.
All right. All right, very good. Well, gentlemen, good luck this fall, and thanks for the time today on the show.
Hey, thanks, man.
852 million acres of public land, 147 million private properties,
all in the palm of your hand. The #1 hunting GPS app just got better. With hundreds of custom map layers, 3D and topographic maps, you can easily scout on the road or at home before you go. And now you can get important weather details, CWD detection, and even know what crops have been planted where. Get the most trusted hunting GPS app ever made. OnX. Know where you stand with OnX.
Sporting Journal Radio is a division of Macaba LLC. If you've got a question, comment, or story idea for us, send us an email. Go to sportingjournalradio.com. While you're there, you can learn how to advertise on the show and visit our store for hats, hoodies, coffee mugs, and more. Go to sportingjournalradio.com.